My name is Erica Gies, and I'm the author of Water Always Wins, Thriving in an Age of Drought and Deluge. And basically, this is a book about nature-based solutions for how to better manage both flood and drought. And I went around the world and I looked at many different places where people are innovating in this sector. And I came to think about these people as water detectives, and these are engineers, landscape architects, land use planners, ecologists, etc. And the reason I came to think of them as water detectives is because they are asking a question, which is, what does water want? And I think that's a question that a lot of people who work with water in terms of like kind of standard Western management aren't asking, because they're asking, what do people want? And so the book is really about changing the culture of how we relate to water. And it's not that what people want isn't important, but it's that when we focus exclusively on what people want, we ignore sometimes the systems in which water has relationships with the underground soil, microbes, beavers, etc., people, and that leads to unintended consequences. So a major point of the book is that it's not just climate change causing these water extremes, but also our development choices that are making these problems much more disastrous for us. This photo is a woman on the Mesopotamian marshes of Iraq. She is a marsh dweller. People have lived on top of the marshes there for 9,000 years, using this reed that she's harvested, Phragmites, for building, for food, for trade, etc. So Iraq is one of the places I went. I also went to China, Peru, Kenya, England, India, Washington State, California. So yeah, I think when we have these really extreme floods and droughts, the dominant culture tends to think of water, for more infrastructure, right? Our infrastructure isn't built for these extremes, so we need higher levees, bigger drains, longer aqueducts. But that erases the resilience of the natural ecosystems and the kind of natural buffer to absorb water and make it available later. So these are all ideas that I'm sure this crowd is very familiar with. So I will just, this slide I think is really important because it shows the scale at which we have interfered with the water cycle globally. Drained 87% of the world's wetlands, intervened on 2/3 of the world's big rivers, altered 75% of the world's land area. And just since 1992, the area covered by cities has doubled. So I think, when I talk to people in the mainstream about this, and I say, our development choices are making things worse, I think sometimes it's hard for them to understand that or to believe it. And that's why I have this slide showing the scale, because if you understand that 87% of the world's wetlands are gone and no longer absorbing water and no longer releasing water, it gives you a little bit more perspective on this point. So the slow water principles, as I see them, are, and I came up with slow water because all of these water detectives I met around the world are all trying to basically restore water's slow phases, either actually protecting or restoring wetland, floodplain, high altitude mountain meadow, forest, water tower, or building some approximation of that, something like a bioswale in a city or whatever. So basically, slow water approaches are bespoke. They're unique to each landscape, climate, and culture, and they seek to work with them rather than try to control them. The slow water approaches take a systems perspective rather than a linear approach. Slow water projects are very focused on groundwater and the relationship between surface water and groundwater, and ensuring that they are connected. Ideally, slow water is local, working within a local area's water means. And it is not centralized, but distributed across the landscape, similar to the idea of how solar panels on everyone's roof adds up to a significant quantity of energy. And that has two aspects. When you think of all the space that we've taken away from water, you understand why we need lots of spaces to give some of that flexibility back. But it's also very handy in a world where humans have occupied so much land, because I think people think, oh, it's too big, we can't do it. But if you're looking for little places, we can find little places throughout our human habitats, and every little bit helps, and cumulatively it adds up to a lot. And that's another point I try to make when talking about slow water, is like, oftentimes people think, well, nature-based solutions are nice, but they can't be a significant part of the solution. And it's really a question of scale. If you're thinking on the scale of watersheds or landscapes, it definitely can be, and the science is beginning to emerge on that. And so the examples in my book, I tried to find places that were starting to take this to scale. So in Peru, it's national. In Kenya, it's national. In California, it's statewide. That's not to say that these places have it all figured out. China, it's national, but they are trying to take it to scale. They are starting to take it to scale so that we can see the true impact that it would have. Slow water is socially just, not taking from some people to give to others, and not protecting some by endangering others. And, I live in California, where it's quite dry, and we're always worried about water supply, although it's raining at the moment in San Francisco, which is great. Anyway, there was a 40-year meta-study that looked at dams on world rivers and found that they brought water to 20% of the world's population, but decreased water availability to 24% of the world's population. So that's something I think we don't really think about when we're saying like, oh, let's build a reservoir, is that we're actually taking that water from somewhere else and from some other people. Similarly, levees, protect some people while increasing harm and flood risk on other people who perhaps can't afford levees. And then the last tenet is that slow water has a community component, community empowerment, community engagement. And some of the projects I saw around the world, people were actively managing these slow water innovations and then sharing water among themselves. In the West, we tend to have authorities taking care of our water, but there are sometimes like an education component. I think of in Southern Arizona, a lot of lightly treated sewage water is then infiltrated into the ground in ponds, and these become important wildlife habitat and also human habitat for recreation, where people can view wildlife and enjoy walking outside, and there is signage explaining the purpose of that. So that's the kind of education component. So anyway, those are the basic tenets of slow water, as I have come to understand them based on the work of these water detectives. And they really, like all of these projects, involve slowing water on the land and infiltrating it to heal that surface groundwater connection.